Hi everybody, meteorologist Joe Cioffi here. It is a Tuesday night, the 3rd of July, 2 minutes after 7 o'clock Eastern Time, and a good evening to all of you as Wednesday, the 4th of July. Just most folks, not all, have the day off. I'll be around to update your weather for you. I just want to start off with some weather that's going on around the New York City area at the moment and south and west toward the Philadelphia area. Again, this radar is real time, 3 minutes after 7 o'clock. Where you see the green boxes, those are flash flood warnings going on, and where you see the yellows, severe thunderstorm warnings. And this is from all the daytime heating that occurred. Temperatures topped out in the low to mid 90s through much of New Jersey and southeastern Pennsylvania. So, of course, the thunderstorms, the boundary zone kind of pushed its way just inland of the coast, and that's where we saw the thunderstorms develop this evening. And the rainfall from some of these storms has been rather substantial. If you look at the measured from Doppler, the red dots that you see along the scale, that's 3.5, 4 inches plus of rain. So some parts of central New Jersey, just to the north and northeast of Trenton, getting hit very, very hard. So just bear that in mind. These thunderstorms are occurring right along the I-95 corridor there. So it's going to make for not a fun getaway if that's the direction you're headed in for the holiday weekend. Meanwhile, we still have another 3 days of heat and humidity to get through, and I think that's going to mean for the possibility that we could see some more showers and thunderstorms. But they should be scattered in nature, or at least, or if they do happen, they may cluster up in some places like they did today. They may not necessarily occur in the same spots, but bear that in mind. That at least I think as far as fireworks are concerned tomorrow night, in most areas the fireworks are after 9 o'clock Eastern Time, and by then I would think that most of the fireworks activity will be fine. The thunderstorm activity at that point will have been already finished. So let's keep our fingers crossed at that. And we're seeing very much a consistent look here with regards to the weather models over the next couple of days. There really isn't much change. You notice if you look off the southeast coast of the United States, you have this southeast flow that runs from there up into southern New England because of the high that's offshore. So we're getting a lot of this tropical moisture. The dew points here have been up in the middle 70s. I mean, that's really atrociously high, with temperatures up in the low to mid 90s. This is like Florida stuff here. And of course, the thunderstorms fired up the way they did. For Friday, this is going to be the big change, as we do have a strong cold front that's going to be approaching and moving through during the day Friday, with perhaps some widespread shower and thunderstorm activity. The timing of that front could make a difference. The GFS has the front just about through by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Sometimes models do that, and then when you get to the actual day, they slow up. Because fronts kind of like to come through more late in the afternoon or evening, but it's all a question of timing. There will be some thunderstorms with this, and I think they'll be widespread, but the payoff is this big, beautiful high that's coming down. And that dry air, by the way, is probably going to push down into North Carolina. So this weather front is going to make it fairly far to the south. And as we go forward in the upper air pattern, we are going back to some degree to this pattern that we had back in June. And that is the trough in the east and the ridge in the west. Take a look here at the upper air. This is the 18,000 foot level. You've got this big ridge in the east, east-west oriented, and it begins to migrate and push westward. So the western part of the United States will start to see an increase in heat and humidity, while there's your trough in the east that drops into New England and eastern Canada. That pushes the cold front through. The westerly winds, well, the westerlies as we call them, but they're actually northwesterly winds aloft all the way down to coastal North Carolina, and then they go out east into the Atlantic. It really can't get hot here in a pattern like that for more than a day or so, because Notice another shortwave trough comes down early next week, along about Tuesday. So that will bring another weather front through. And again, as we go through the long range, and the models all seem to be kind of lined up this way, it's going to be ridge in the west, trough in the east. And that will at least bring down Canadian air masses every 3 days or so. If it does get hot and humid, it might be for a day, or at most maybe a day and a half, and then a weather front will come right along and knock it out. It's a whole lot different than having the big high sitting over you. And that big high, by the way, parks itself over Utah, Nevada, and Arizona. So it's really in the southwest and in the western part of the United States now. It's going to be your turn to see perhaps more hot weather in the longer ranges. The trough comes out of the western United States. Now, I want to also take a look at the tropics. The Hurricane Center did mention this system today as we look at it on the satellite loop. There is a large upper low that is sitting off the east of the Florida coast, between Florida and Bermuda. And if you watch the clouds, you can see there's this sort of very broad counterclockwise circulation, and it looks really like an upper low, where you have very little going on near the center, and you've sort of have these, little bands that are way out. There's no surface low that we could find. Oddly enough, if you look off the North Carolina coast, go east of North Carolina, you see this sort of flare-up of clouds. There's some kind of little low-level circulation that is moving westward there, a very, very small-scale feature. The Hurricane Center mentions this entire area and does indicate that there is a 30% chance of this developing in the next 5 days as it moves northwestward and then turns northward off the east coast. But bear in mind that you are going to have a front coming down from the north with those westerlies dropping. And even if something were to develop here, it will only be able to get so far west before it gets kicked out to the northeast. So this is not going to be anything. I really don't think this is going to develop into much of anything at all. But I'm bringing it up because the Hurricane Center did. We'll just watch and see what happens. In the meantime, if you look up across the northeast, you can see that blow up of thunderstorms on the visible satellite. Very impressive here. The blow up of the clouds. It almost starts from nothing, and then it just blossoms into this massive area of strong thunderstorms and severe weather. And by the way, there were no, we were not put in a risk of severe weather today, which is interesting. And a lot of times when you get into these deep tropical air masses, you don't necessarily get the cue from the Storm Prediction Center, but it's kind of understood in an air mass like this that you could wind up with isolated severe thunderstorms, and usually the big issue with these things is heavy rain. Also, we do have heavy rain going on in western Louisiana and East Texas. This is part of that Gulf of Mexico system that we were looking at over the last couple of days that was, basically too far inland for it to develop into anything, and that remains the case. Kind of looks like this weak low with an inverted trough moving westward with some heavy downpours and thunderstorms. The west coast of Florida today getting hit with some heavy thunderstorms from Naples northward to Port Charlotte to just south of Tampa. You can see them here, and they're moving southwestward, which is kind of what you'd expect with a big upper high to the north. Slight risk of severe weather up in the northern plains and parts of the northern Rockies, where we do have a severe thunderstorm watch that has just been posted. Always remember, folks, right now the map you're seeing is showing radar echoes as of 12 minutes after 7 Eastern time. So if you're watching this on a replay later on this evening or tonight, please check with your local National Weather Service office at weather.gov and check the latest radars for all the correct information with regards to the severe weather relative to the time of day, because obviously this is all going to be dated stuff. As far as the heat is concerned, here we have, still have this fairly large area with heat advisories. That's going to go on for the next couple of days. A few pockets of excessive heat warnings up. I think the temperatures here my way tomorrow might be a bit less, than what they were today. Why does it do this? Every time, it kind of reloads itself, and I'm not sure why it does that. And it always seems to do it when I'm, about to do something with this. So give me 1 second here. I'll bring up the window. I want to show you at least what's happened with regards to some of the current weather conditions. And oddly enough, this was another day where it was actually hotter up here than it was in the southeast and over Florida, where a lot of those areas were just in the 80s. But these are 7 p.m. temperatures, and we still have some pockets of low 90s where there have not been any thunderstorms today across the northern part of Virginia up into Maryland and southeastern Pennsylvania. Where you see the green and yellow boxes, that is the severe weather that's going on at the moment. I'm going to turn on, populate some of the radar echoes and put them in the background for you. Out to the west, let's go a little further to the west and see what's happening there. And as we move toward where we have the heat advisories up in the Midwest, coming up on 6:15 Central Time, temperatures are in the mid-80s to around 90. We do have some scattered thunderstorms going on here, I guess, to help cool things down. And just for laughs, let's go to the southwest, from there into Oklahoma and Texas, where we've got temperatures in the mid-90s to around the low 100s, 100 at most of North Texas, seeing temperatures at 100 degrees or higher. And in the southwest, we've got temperatures in the usual spots where you expect to see temperatures between 105 and 110. You've got that going on as well. So the hot weather, that big upper high shifting to the west is probably going to mean for even hotter temperatures here as we head toward the end of the week and going into the weekend, and perhaps into the longer term. As I said, the west looks like it is where it is going to be hot. We do have, let's see if he shows up, it shows up on the satellite loop, and I think it does. We do have a hurricane on the Pacific side. It's the only system right now that is being watched, and actually it looks pretty impressive on the satellite loop here. This is Hurricane Fabio, and it is very well developed, as you can see. Let's see what they're carrying. I think they were carrying 110-mile-an-hour winds. Maximum sustained winds are 110 miles an hour, so it's just under a Category 3. It's possible that it could reach. It has a little more time to strengthen into tomorrow morning before it starts to get further and further north, and it's going to begin to run into the cooler waters of the Pacific. And one of the things that I'm looking at with respect to the longer term, as far as the tropics are concerned, there isn't a whole lot of activity that's being indicated on the Pacific side in the once Fabio is done. So oftentimes when the Pacific quiets down, the Atlantic picks up, especially when you get into later July and into August. So let's see what happens here. There doesn't appear to be anything in the offing on the Pacific side, so maybe the Pacific is going into a lull period, and that perhaps might open a door for something to happen over the next couple of weeks in the Atlantic. But there's nothing pending, and certainly nothing that we have to worry about there with respect to the short term. Welcome everybody tonight. I hope you all have a good 4th of July planned. Corey Bodziak with the severe thunderstorm warning for Camden County. Yes, also for parts of Gloucester and Burlington County as well. Do I think southern New Jersey will see severe weather on Friday with that cold front? Well, it is going to, it is going to move fairly quickly through the state. I wouldn't be surprised to see some strong thunderstorms. Whether they're severe or not is another matter. But we'll evaluate the severe weather risk as we get a little closer. I think it's possible that there could be some strong to severe thunderstorms when that front moves southward. Priscilla Mayu has been monitoring the drought situation in Louisiana. 24 hours of 3.5 inches of rain in Opelousas. Just what you needed to help the drought, and more expected between now and Sunday. The Weather Prediction Center does have you guys getting substantial rains over the next 7 days, so keep your fingers crossed that it happens. And with that upper ridge the way it is going to create that tropical flow coming in off the Atlantic westward into the Gulf of Mexico. So you do have the ingredients there for some fairly strong, some heavy rains to occur. Well-baked T-Bear topped 100 today, but hot, but not like Monday when it hit 94. I'm sorry, 100 on Monday, 94 today. Happy 4th of July to you. The humidity has been just god-awful. I mean, it really has. It's to see dew points up in the mid-70s up here, it doesn't happen very often, and when it does, you're just downright miserable. And I want that to go away, but unfortunately, we're going to have to wait until Friday. David Schwartz, did you see that NHC reduced the tropical forecast for the Atlantic to below? Now, it's very interesting, David, because if that is based on the cooler, due to the normal water temperatures. And I've been saying the fact that it's all fine and dandy that that the water temperatures are cooler than average in the tropical Atlantic now, but what are they going to be when we get into the peak part of the hurricane season? And I've noticed, and one of my friends, Bill Goodman, who's a meteorologist at the National Weather Service in Upton, New York on Long Island, sent me a message yesterday, and he pointed out that the ocean water temperatures in the eastern Atlantic, in the tropical eastern Atlantic, has actually warmed somewhat. Let me see if I can bring up his link that he sent me. Give me 1 second. I just want to find it. Oh, come on. I always have these frustrated. Let's see if I can find his message from yesterday. Okay, here we go. So I will bring this up on the window. It's going to be a little bit hard to see. I'll try to make it a bit bigger. Okay, so hang on 1 second. Okay, this is actually a loop of the ocean water temperatures in the Atlantic and the Pacific. And I want you to look here at the tropical Atlantic and what's happened over the last 4 weeks or so. And you've had this area of below average temperatures, but that area is shrinking in coverage and intensity. You have a rather large area of above average temperatures in the subtropics. And also notice that off the New Jersey and southern New England coast, it's gone from being below average, which was been like that for weeks. Now suddenly it's above average. So depending on the wind and the water temperature, the wind direction, water temperatures can turn on the dime. And one of the reasons why the water temperatures now have warmed so considerably where I am is the fact that we went into this southeast flow that started yesterday. That is coming right off the Gulf Stream. So that is pushing warmer water toward the shoreline. So that's a pretty substantial anomaly that's being shown of 3 to 4 degrees above average from coastal New Jersey to southern New England. And all of that due to the Atlantic high and the that southeast push that's coming up, pushing that warm water back westward. So they may have looked at that, and now let's see if this trend continues. The cold water was bleeding down from Greenland southward along the west coast of Europe. That seems to have stopped. So, the important thing with regards to the Atlantic hurricane season as far as the deep tropics are concerned is that you don't really get any activity from there, from the Cape Verde area, the Cape Verdes, or the Cabo Verdes, we should say. You don't get that activity it doesn't get going until late July or early August anyway. So the fact that those water temperatures are below average now doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be below average a month from now. So we're going to watch that carefully. This is why I have this is one of the reasons why I'm always very cautious when it comes to these long-range forecasts that come out, because you can have so many factors that change on a dime. And Oh, the other thing we should look at, by the way, which is important on that map. Let me bring it back up. And here we go. The other thing to look at is out in the Pacific, right along the equator. This is, there's been some indication of an El Nino possibly developing as we go through the summer months and into the fall. And notice right along the equator, you've got this narrow band of slightly above average water temperatures. And if you watch carefully off the coast of South America, that little bubble of red shows up, and it's kind of blossoming it out there. So we're going to watch that development as well. That may actually be more important, I think, as far as the hurricane season is concerned, is the development of a possible El Nino strengthening as we go into August and September, because that would create hostile upper air wind conditions across the Atlantic. I'm not saying that this trend is going to continue. I mean, here too, we could wind up seeing the El Nino staying very weak, or maybe it will abort for one reason or another. But the two factors there, the tropical Atlantic and the Pacific, to be watched. The other thing is, by the way, in the Atlantic, the subtropical Atlantic continues to show water temperatures above average. So if we could very well see maybe a hurricane season where we see these systems develop further north than they usually do. If you go back to the 70s, you can find a long period, a long stretch where you got a lot of storms that developed north of 25 degrees north to about 35 degrees north, and very few of them that developed from the Cabo Verde Islands in the tropical Atlantic. There was a fairly long period where there were very few, if any, tropical systems from the early 70s up until the late 70s, where there were years where you had absolutely nothing that developed out that way. So it's always an interesting time and an interesting puzzle to dissect when it comes to watching these tropical systems evolve. Kev Dreadful, I'm looking for some ocean temps conducive to crabbing on the south shore of Long Island. You want to do some crabbing? Well, I'm not familiar with whether you want the waters warm or cold, but if you want them warm, those water temperatures have warmed up over the last couple of days. So look for them to get warmer still over the next 2 days. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some numbers on the high side. I'm going to just take a quick look, at least for my area, see what some of the water temperatures are. And okay, wow, I got to check this out for myself. That has to be an error here. The Great South Bay, somewhere, I don't know where it's measured, with a water temperature of 83. That seems to be a bit ridiculous, but you've got water temperatures now 20 miles south of Fire Island, 77, New York Harbor entrance 76, 23 miles southwest of Montauk, 74. I could believe it offshore that Gulf Stream with that southeast, that very, persistent but relatively light southeast flow is pushing the warm waters of the Gulf Stream toward the coast. You get something like this in the month of August, you get water temperatures in the middle to upper 70s. So that's a substantial temperature jump that's being reported, at least at the surface. The sea surface temperatures. I imagine if you go down 6 or 7 feet, you're going to be, it's going to be cold, and it's going to be colder, and all it takes is a day or two of a west wind to upwell all that, and all that warm water you see will disappear in a big hurry. Let's see, Sebastian P., who, by the way, you're on your way back, thankfully. Had a little bit of not a good experience up. You mentioned here you were up in Lake Champlain, and you kind of crossed over to the Canadian side, and they had you without your passport, and you got held for a few days. And I'm sorry you had to go through all that, but now on your way back, thankfully. Let's see, just a few other. Okay? I'm going to check Sebastian. I didn't get to see them, but let me see if I can find them. with regards to that. Colorado State, Space and Earth Weather. Colorado State came out with an updated report on that the Atlantic water is cooler than originally anticipated, so they've downgraded to below average today. Well, like I said, Space and Earth Weather, that may very well be the case, but let's see if that holds. It's still early. We're only going into July, and most years you don't get too much that happen during July and August. And by the way, also remember, the fact that we had that one storm in May. June we didn't have anything. July so far was just getting started, but we could wind up with an active August to October where we could put down 9 storms in that time frame, where the tropical activity from early August to the first week or 10 days of October is above average. But because we didn't have those early storms, your numbers could come in lower than average overall. So you got to be a little careful on how you manage the numbers here. Plus, remember last year we had, I believe, A, B, C, D, E, F through the G storm before Harvey formed. I mean, we had 8 tropical systems going into the middle part of August before the engine really revved up. So not having a couple of storms in June and a storm or 2 in July can cut your numbers back. We'll see. Let's see, our tropical tidbits. How could you tell if a cold front would bring severe thunderstorms to southern New England? All right, well, Matthew, you have to look at not just the levels, the surface level of the atmosphere, but you want to look at the upper levels of the atmosphere. Particularly, you want to see, as you look at the upper levels, whether there's a strong short wave that's coming down and a good strong jet at the 700 millibar level, the 850 level, and so on. And at the same time, you don't want any kind of marine influence at the surface. If you don't want, you want the wind to be more land-based. You don't want any kind of marine layer to come in that stabilizes the atmosphere. There are a bunch of other things that you want to look at too. You want to look at the lapse rate. You want to, in other words, how fast are the temperatures falling relative to height. If you have a very steep lapse rate, that indicates a very unstable atmosphere. And you can also, as Reaver points out, look at the lifted index. If the lifted index numbers go negative, that close to 0 or go negative, that's usually a good indicator of severe weather. I haven't really given it a good close look with regards to Friday is concerned. Because I had all the short short range. And Reaver, you're referring to the Cape index, which is, it's a calculated number that takes into account all sorts of different aspects of how unstable the atmosphere. So you look for Cape numbers, that are up there, 2,000, 3,000, and so on. It works. It works and it doesn't work. Like everything with the weather models, you have some of these models that work some of the time, and other times they don't. If you go to the Storm Prediction Center's website, they often speak a lot about Cape, and there's a lot of tools, by the way. If you're really interested, in this, go to the SPC website, go to weather.gov and look at the bottom where they have all their different links listed, and click on severe weather and go to SPC, the Storm Prediction Center, because they have a lot of different tools that you could look at that you could have a lot. I don't want to say a lot of fun with, but you get what I mean. I mean, if this is the kind of thing that you really enjoy, you can certainly learn a lot from that. William Huber, fishing on Saturday, weather okay? Yeah, it should be nice with low humidity. I have not been able to go fishing with this heat and humidity. It's just been absolutely ridiculous. Why can't I wear polos on the air, shirts and ties in the heat? Reaver 501. Well, I am inside, and actually my studio, the temperature in here is 69, so I'm actually... it's comfortable and a little bit on the cool side. David Schwartz, on a non-weather note, if you are able to donate blood platelets, please do so. There's a critical need for blood platelets right now, especially if you are O negative. Yeah, this is usually a time of year where blood supplies run very low. So if you do donate blood and you have it, this would be a good opportunity for you to do so. Johnny Quest, thank you for your answer to my question. By the way, only 89 today, but the humidity was insane. The humidity's god awful. It really is. with these dew points the way they are. 75 degrees is about the highest I have ever experienced. 75 with respect to the dew points. I'm not sure, Sebastian, where you're going with that. What 75? What are you referring to? Let's see. I'm just trying to get to everybody's question tonight. Had a little extra time. Colorado State was the one that lowered their forecast. Their forecast, by the way, was probably one of the more bullish forecasts that came out this year with regards to hurricane season. And William, my pool is actually 45,000 gallons. It's 25 by 45. I put it in 20 years ago. It was the best thing I ever did. I spent a lot of time in it, and definitely got my money's worth. In New Orleans, is the dew point ever 80? Well, you know, having lived down there, if it wasn't 80, it was darn close to it. I don't remember. You know, let me just take a look at what's doing there right now. I think I seem to recall that there might have been a time or two where the dew point, you know, we did have dew points there up to about 80. Just checking their surface observations right now on the Louisiana Roundup. New Orleans International right now is 80 with a dew point of 78, 94% humidity with a partly sunny sky. Most of the dew points are in the middle 70s. Now, they've probably had some thunderstorms which have knocked these numbers down, but very definitely have seen dew points there in the upper 70s. It probably has been the odd day, you know, where the dew point got to 80 or better, but it's been a long, long time. Thanks, William Huber, hitting Super Chat. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you very much. What model is usually correct when forecasting dew points? I actually like to use the GFS model output statistics and look at their dew point numbers. They're okay. No model is perfect, but I like to use the model output statistics on the GFS because they're in numerical form and I'm not reading them off a map. I'm getting specific numbers for specific points, and they're a good tool to use. If you Google GFS and then the second word MOS, M-O-S, you can go to the Weather Service's website that you can actually pull down GFS model output statistics to get temperature, max, min, 3-hour temperatures, 3-hour dew points, and so forth. Reaver was asking if anyone has experienced an 80-degree dew point. I answered 75. Having lived down there, Sebastian, I could remember a few instances where you had the dew points well up into the 70s to near 80. Absolutely miserable. I don't know if you know. I'm racking my brains from 30 years ago, but you know, we had dew points here in the mid to upper 70s in the last few days, and that's just insane, absolutely insane. And by the way, even with the dew points as high as they were in New Orleans, the tropical humidity that's in the south is different. It feels different to me than the tropical humidity you get up here in the Northeast versus the tropical humidity you get in the Southeast and down in Florida. It just has a different feel to it, in my view. Okay, gonna leave it here, folks. Tomorrow is the 4th of July. I'm gonna be kind of on a regular schedule tomorrow, so you'll be hearing from me with a live stream. I'll probably do it around either 6 or 7 o'clock, just so that it doesn't. I'm not going to be competing with the fireworks that are going to be going on. So bear that in mind. 9 o'clock tonight. You've got the Joe Cioffi show, the Joe and Joe Weather Show on Facebook. We're going to try to shoot for 9:15 or 9:20, so be sure to tune in for that. And if you miss it or can't get to Facebook or you're not on Facebook, I will upload that to the video library on YouTube either before 10 o'clock or if we're a little late, I'll do it when I get home tonight, probably around midnight or so. And those of you who have used the Amazon link on the descriptor to this video or the live stream to do your Amazon shopping, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it. Just a disclaimer that we are a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates Program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for us, being this channel, and myself to earn fees by linking to Amazon.com and affiliated sites. You get your stuff on Amazon at great prices, and Amazon throws me back some coins so I can get myself a couple of cigars and a nice coffee, and everybody's happy. So thank you very much for those of you who have done that. Thank you very much for those of you who have hit Super Chat. I really, really appreciate it. We will see you at Facebook, hopefully at 9:15 for the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Otherwise, happy 4th of July, and we'll see you tomorrow.